Hadi Konuşalım programına hoş geldiniz. Bugünkü konuğumuz Birleşmiş Milletler Nüfus Fonu Doğu Avrupa ve Orta Asya Bölge Direktörü Alanna Armitage. Welcome, Alanna.
Hi, Azra. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I would love to ask you, what is Let's Talk about?
Well, first of all, let me say how happy I am to be in Istanbul, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and to be with you, Azra, such a wonderful spokesperson for the United Nations Population Fund.
Thank you so much.
So Let's Talk, we started the Let's Talk movement basically with Natalia Vodianova, who is a supermodel and philanthropist globally. And we held the first event in Antalya in Turkey about a year ago. And the whole point of the movement is really, as it says, to talk.
Yeah.
Because there are so many issues around women's health that are stigmatized or taboo that hold millions of girls and women back from being able to realize a healthy life. So the idea really is to talk about issues related to women's health in a very open way to sort of destigmatize the issues that are so stigmatized and taboo. So the first one, as I said, was in Antalya.
Yes.
You were there.
Yes.
It was wonderful. And
very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great.
How wonderful that so many people gathered together.
Yes.
And it's such a brave thing, because it's not easy to talk about taboos.
Exactly. And what was so impressive was that we had many people there, including the First Lady of Turkey, to speak to issues that are sometimes hard to talk about, but in a way that is extremely respectful. And for example, the First Lady herself said that, you know, no more gender-based violence. There can be no more violence against women in Turkey. So even issues like that around women's health or around violence that are very hard to talk about, but once you start, everybody wants to keep talking.
It's true, because it's so necessary also to be able to have a fulfilling life, to be able to live to your full potential.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
As you said, taboos hold us back, and I think it's so important for young people to be able to talk about what comes actually natural.
Right. Exactly.
When we talk about family planning, health.
Right.
Yeah, it's really important.
No, it was. And like you said, in Antalya, we actually spoke about many different health issues.
Yes, we did.
Remember? Yeah.
Yes.
So from the issue of menstruation, for example, which is very taboo.
Yeah.
And I know that there are lots of girls and women who are still afraid to go to the pharmacy because they're embarrassed to buy tampons
I can relate
or
to
pads,
that.
right?
Yes, I relate to that.
From that to issues around family planning, contraception, that perhaps a young person or a young woman who's newlywed would like to access contraception, but she doesn't know who to ask, she doesn't know who to talk to.
Right.
To issues again like violence against women, domestic violence, where often there are too many women who are afraid to speak out. And that is such a tragedy. And we know that here in Turkey there are 440 women killed every day. I mean every year.
Every year. Yeah.
So we know that in Turkey there are 440 women killed every year by an intimate partner, and this is a tragedy. And
it is a big
it's
tragedy.
A tragedy.
Especially after becoming a mom, you start thinking about how to raise your child.
Absolutely.
At which age should I talk on which issue? And I think it's important that they get the knowledge and the education, because then a young person can make choices. Choices are important.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Azra, because if a young person doesn't grow up with the education, knowing their body, knowing how to protect themselves, how to protect themselves from pregnancy, how to protect themselves from HIV or sexually transmitted infections.
A violent partner.
Yeah, a violent partner. If they don't learn that somewhere, it's very tragic for their lives, because they would have a much healthier life if they actually were able to access that education in schools or from their parents. I personally have 4 children.
You have?
And I'm very proud to say that I have spoken to all of my children from a very early age about issues related to sexuality, to, of course, in a very appropriate manner according to their age, because each age is different. But I've always tried to be very open with them so that they can always come to me with questions. If they have questions on anything at all, then they feel free to come to me and ask me, and I feel good about that.
That's amazing. That's great. And I also think that sometimes we might think that not talking about it, about these issues, might protect them more, which is actually not the case, isn't it?
You're exactly right. I think often we shy away from talking about things. We think that if we do talk about it, somehow we will make them think about it more, or you know, there are rumors that a young person becomes more promiscuous if you give them information on sexuality education, but we know that it's exactly the opposite.
Right.
The more education they receive, the less the more they are able to actually control their own lives, to make good choices, to make good choices for themselves. So
that's very true.
Education is key.
That's very true. Yes.
Azra, let me ask you a question as well, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Because I've been, since 2012, you have been a spokesperson. You've been the voice of UNFPA in Turkey, and we are so grateful.
Thank you.
But I wanted to know what led you to do this kind of work. You know, what led you to be an advocate for issues around women's health and young people's health?
I think partly it has to do with my upbringing. I think, yes, I'm lucky to say that I was raised in a household where I could speak my mind, where I could go, as you just mentioned, go to my parents and speak about certain things, about period, about other issues. And at the same time, I always felt this passion, this feeling that whenever I saw injustice, if it is done to people, nature, or animals, I always got upset. And I think by age 21, I became Miss World, and that wasn't planned at all. But I think it came in my life because of these feelings I had, and it was a great platform for me to express that and to contribute and to help in these issues. And I think from then on, I always searched, what can I do? How can I help? What can I do first as a person to change? And it's not easy, and I'm still trying to find my way, but it's wonderful now that I'm a spokesperson of UNFPA.
What do you think then are the biggest issues in Turkey today in terms of taboo and stigma? What do you see as some of the issues that are the most taboo to talk about here in Turkey?
Well, I can say I think taboos around sexuality is a big one here. I can see that and hear that around me, and I think it's important, as we said before, to know ourselves, to know our bodies, to get the education, to know that we have choices, that we can shape our own lives. Because it pains me that a young person doesn't have that. It's really, really tragic, as you said before.
It is.
It is. They have the right to know. And to not be ashamed of. There are also positive things. In the past, many issues weren't even talked about, of course, in Turkey, but for example, violence against women now is more talked, more discussed. And I think that is a step, but action needs to follow, right?
Exactly.
What can we do to
actually change the situation dramatically? Because I know that in Turkey there is a very strong commitment by the government, by civil society, even by private sector, to really end violence against women. I've seen it. I've met with government and I know how committed they are.
That's great to hear, by the way.
And yet it continues. So, you know, what are we doing wrong? I think we really need to look at the underlying social norms that are perhaps causing this kind of violence to take place, that it's allowed to take place still. Because if you look at the statistics that we just spoke about, more than one woman a day is being killed by her partner in Turkey. How can we let that happen? How could it still happen? I think that is...
We need to look maybe to the source. Is it? I'm still trying to figure out and to find answers. And it's great to be able to ask you these questions. Is it the source that starts in the family? Like, I imagine, very simple, a mother, her situation might not let her escape a violent relationship. Also being ashamed of violence is a part of this. Is again taboo.
Exactly.
It plays here as well.
To the taboo.
And also not feeling the captain of your own fate.
Right. Exactly. So I think you're absolutely right. It starts in the family. It starts even sometimes before birth with the idea that you would prefer to have a son. Right?
Yes,
some people
that's
still
also still happening.
prefer to have a son, and then, I mean,
And unwanted pregnancies.
Right, unwanted pregnancy.
Yes.
And so often that
maternal
the
resentment,
status of girls is less than boys still in some places.
It
and
is,
I think eventually that leads to the situation where girls and women are valued less than men and are therefore able to...
Not educated in some parts
or,
as well.
Or that's why violence is able to exist, because if one man every day, or more than one man every day, was being killed by their partner, I don't know, would we have done something differently?
Good question.
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Question.
But I do know that on the positive side, there is lots of movement to end violence against women and girls in the country. And UNFP is very proud to work with partners who are doing that. We also have a wonderful program with private sector that I mentioned. It's called Business Against Domestic Violence. And lots of different companies in Turkey are actually bringing this into their workplace.
Yes, I've heard.
So that's extremely powerful. We also work with the government, we're working with the police, with religious leaders, so we really are tackling this issue together with different partners in Turkey, and I'm sure that we all together, and with that commitment, we will get there. But we do, given what took place a couple of weeks ago, the very tragic murder of Emine
and this
Bulut.
happens not only,
and you know,
it happens all the time.
Yeah, and this
too many.
Such a tragedy.
One is too many, of course, but sometimes I can't wrap my mind around it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the fact that people actually then came out and started speaking about it, I think was extremely powerful.
Yes,
and you saw people from all walks of society saying this is just wrong, and this has to stop. So I think, you know, in that sense, it was a real wake-up call for everybody.
Yes, and also as upbringing, if there is already violence in the home, that child might be more prone to be violent as well. So we have to break it somewhere. But it's a very, it's not easy.
Right. No, you're right. We have statistics on that too that also show that, you know, young boys who grow up in a home that's violent will be more likely to be violent with their spouse. So definitely that's an issue.
Yes. Yeah. It's same for girls as well.
Yeah,
of course.
Sure, or they will accept it.
Yes. So I think also, in our society, the role of psychologists, people I think it's very important, because we in the media we usually hear more about the victim, and but I wish there was more subject matter on what can we do to the perpetrator. I mean, of course, maybe it's not easy to change that, but there should be more solutions, I feel, I think, for this.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one other interesting phenomena that we're seeing taking place around the world is also men coming together in support, or men against violence against women.
Yes, which is very important.
Yeah, a lot of different groups that are working to together with women to end violence against women, but also working with men themselves to change social norms around fatherhood, around parenthood, and I think that we're seeing, you know, there's amazing men out there who are extremely supportive, and
I think it's very powerful, and very powerful that a man can say to a fellow man, what you're doing is wrong.
Exactly. It's
very powerful.
Absolutely.
I think.
And
it's needed in our culture, I think, more, and it's more effective, I feel sometimes, that it can happen like that.
I think so. And I think that the role of fathers is so important.
Very important.
And we're seeing some really beautiful examples of fathers getting increasingly involved in the child care.
Yes, and the child needs the father, not only the mother.
Absolutely.
Myself, I've experienced this in the media, that after becoming a mother, suddenly they will ask me questions. Isn't it hard to manage a career, work, and being a mother? And I think same for men. Why don't we ask the men as well? And I think it's also important for the father to be in the life of his child, and it's a very valuable relationship and necessary, especially for the future of the child as well, I feel. So that's 50-50 actually. So I understand that I'm breastfeeding, and I understand I am, you know, the first months, it's of course my role as a mother is very important.
Yes.
But then
the father also has a
pushing
very
me in a stereotype.
Yeah.
It's not the right thing to do.
You were actually asked how you're balancing both
all
the
the
career
time.
and the...
All the time. Actually, this came in the media too. She is not open to work. she doesn't want to work, or yeah, it's not the right thing to do. I think that's
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that also leads to one of the other issues that is taboo, because going back to the taboos that you were mentioning, the issue of sexuality, the issue of reproductive health, the issue of family planning. Basically, unless women like us have access to family planning, we actually can't plan our careers, right?
No.
I mean, if you can't plan your family, you can't plan your life.
No, exactly.
And so it is extremely important that as empowered women, and I think we're very lucky that we can call ourselves empowered women, who have had choices in life and who have had their human rights respected, we have had access to being able to plan our families and therefore plan our lives.
Very true.
And you know, if you can't talk about those things, then it's very difficult to plan your life. It's very difficult to be an empowered woman. So we don't talk about it a lot, but it is an essential piece to being,
of course.
So we need to make sure that women and girls are valued in society as much as boys and men. That's number one. Without that, we can't change anything. No. And in order to do that, we need to work with changing those norms, like working with men, as we talked about. So working with men so that they become more involved in the family, so that they become better fathers.
Raising the awareness.
Raising the awareness, you know.
Because education, or putting this in the education system, is not as easy as it sounds.
Yes, although that has to be there too. Because,
I totally agree.
Right, because
I wish it was more.
Exactly, yeah.
So talking about it raises awareness.
Yes, yeah. And then the other part of it, I think, is to talk about it. And that's why we do have this movement called Let's Talk. Once you start talking, it's like an avalanche effect. More and more people start to talk, and then they ask questions, and then they get the responses, and then norms start to change. People.
So what's the most important thing we talk about at Let's Talk is about the taboos and how it affects girls and women.
Exactly.
It really affects us.
It does. It does. From the time you're born, basically, I think stigma and taboo are really detrimental to your health. So for menstruation, for example, if a girl doesn't know what that is from the very beginning, if no one talks about it, first of all, she's surprised, and then in some cultures, she's even seen as dirty or impure.
Very
and
true.
in some places, they actually, during a girl's period, they put her out in a shed. She can't stay in the house, imagine.
So those the norms.
Right, it's the norms
what you think is normal.
Yeah, right.
That is.
Exactly, so things like that. And then also if you don't, like you
know
were
about
talking
family
about,
planning,
if you don't know about family planning, that
contraception,
limits your access.
that you have a right to have contraception. And
all of those things. All of these things that people don't like to talk about are actually essential to your well-being.
And that just deprives them of choices in life.
Yeah.
That's
and I don't know about you, but I can remember when I was growing up, of course, I grew up much longer before you, so it was a different era. But when I was growing up, no one talked about anything. And I had wonderful parents who I love dearly. But even they, who were modern people, were afraid to talk to me about certain things. And I remember as a teenager always thinking, oh, I wish I could ask this question. I wish I knew about that. Who could I ask about this? You know, and I'm sure that still goes on today.
It does a lot.
You know,
it pains me that it does.
Yeah, and
so I think we should be able to talk to our parents.
Right, we should be able to ask questions that are so important to us.
Those are the people we trust most.
Yeah, yeah,
it's very important.
And sadly, I think again, you know, you mentioned earlier, which I think is really important, that there is this myth that if we give information to young people, it will make them behave more badly.
Yes, or end up in situations we don't want.
Exactly.
Which is actually not the case.
Which is exactly not the case.
Yes.
It's the opposite. In fact, if you give information to young people, they can protect themselves.
Yes.
They can protect themselves from early pregnancy, from sexually transmitted infections, from HIV.
Which is getting a very high rate. HIV is getting very higher in Turkey as well.
Exactly. This is such an issue.
Which is also a taboo still. We can't talk about it. We should talk about it. We shouldn't leave those young people alone.
If you don't talk about it, people die. I mean, basically, it's an issue of saving lives.
Yes, saving lives.
You need to talk about it to save lives.
Save lives and helping them to live to their full potential.
Right,
and be happy people,
absolutely.
happy person.
Yeah, exactly. To be realized.
Well, this is very great and lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Azra.
And to be able to chat at Let's Talk.
Yes,
and we're going to talk more.
I know you are. I know you are. Yes, I was really happy to have this conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing your other Let's Talks in Turkey and following it closely.
I'll keep it up.
Thank you. Great. Good for you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Evet, ilk programımızın sonuna geldik. Hadi konuşalımla devam edeceğiz ve daha çok konuşacağız.
Teşekkürler.
Teşekkürler.